Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on some of the absolute most chilling atmospheric locations you'll find anywhere in India. But look, we're not just here to swap spooky ghost stories around a campfire. We're going to explore the fascinating and honestly often tragic real-world history that birthed this famous folklore. Because as you'll see, historical facts, they can actually be way more terrifying than the myths they inspire.
So it begs the question, right? Are these notoriously spooky places actually haunted by literal ghosts, or are they simply haunted by the sheer weight of their own dark history? We're taking a completely neutral historical approach today. We're contrasting those spine-chilling myths with the very real political and sociological realities of India's past. To do that, we're following a bit of a haunted itinerary. We'll start with the lore of the land, move through cursed forts, explore restless colonial graveyards, investigate coastal mysteries, uncover urban apparitions, and finally wrap up with how history haunts the present.
Section 1. The lore of the land. Why we seek to supernatural. Why do we actively seek out these eerie, desolate places? It's not just about the jump scares. It's actually driven by this deep human desire to peek into the forgotten lives of those who came before us, especially when those lives ended in tragedy.
Section 2. Cursed forts and treachery, kingdoms frozen in time. India's ancient political intrigue, violent assassinations, and tyrannical rulers have birthed some of the absolute most enduring and terrifying royal curses in the world.
Take the village of Kuldhara in Rajasthan. The legend paints a complete horror scene. 85 villages of Paliwal Brahmins just vanished in a single night, cursing the land forever because a monstrous prime minister named Salim Singh wanted to force the village chief's daughter into marriage. But the reality? The region was actually likely abandoned due to massive, entirely unsustainable tax increases by that exact same ruler. Survival just became impossible. So, while a midnight mass exodus to escape a demon-like tyrant makes for a legendary myth, the stark reality of hundreds of families forced into destitution by a greedy government, well, that's a completely different kind of historical terror.
Let's move over to Shaniwar Wada Fort in Pune. Now, this beautiful 13-story palace was built back in 1730 by Peshwa Bajirao I, but the grandeur did not last. In 1773, a horrific betrayal went down. The incredibly vulnerable 16-year-old Peshwa Narayan Rao was brutally murdered by the Gardi hunting tribe. And get this, it was a hit orchestrated through a manipulated letter from his own aunt. Then, in 1828, the fort was largely destroyed by an unexplained fire. It went from a seat of immense power to a literal slaughterhouse, and eventually just ruins.
Which leads us to this incredibly chilling echo, "Uncle, save me." Historical records and local lore actually align here. They say that during the attack, the young prince ran down the hallway howling in terror, screaming those exact words for his uncle's help, completely unaware that his uncle's wife was the one who actually ordered the hit. Locals claim that on new moon nights, you can still hear the agonizing shrieks of a teenage boy echoing through those ruins. Just, wow.
Now, consider Bhangarh Fort, which is widely considered India's most haunted place. Established in 1573, its ruins are actually surprisingly lush, but the atmosphere is just heavy with dark magic lore. Legend claims a dark wizard named N.K. Sinha tried to enchant the local princess with a love potion, was crushed by a boulder, and cursed the city with his dying breath. But whether it was a wizard's curse or an invading army that actually destroyed the city, the vibe is so incredibly dense that the Archaeological Survey of India has put up a literal government warning board. They explicitly prohibit anyone from entering the fort after sunset. There's no way I'd test that.
Section 3. Restless colonial graveyards. Footprints of the Empire. The heavy historical footprint of the British East India Company birthed a completely different type of folklore for us to look at, one rooted deeply in displacement and disease.
Look at the Lothian Cemetery in Delhi. It was officially built by the British in 1808 as an English-only cemetery. But history tells us this was actually an ancient Muslim burial ground for Indian royalty. The British literally dug up and displaced the native graves just to claim the beautiful tree-lined land for themselves. And out of this profound disrespect grew one of the most bizarre supernatural tales, a 200-year-old spectral turf war. Locals living near the cemetery claim to see actual phantom armies, Mughal spirits in traditional garb fighting English ghosts in uniform, battling every single night for control over the graveyard. It's a ghostly, haunting reflection of India's very real colonial struggle.
Over in Kolkata, the South Park Street Cemetery offers a different, definitely more tragic look at colonial life.
Opened in 1767 and closed by 1790, it was built right on marshy jungle terrain. The true horror here wasn't curses or murders at all. It was tropical diseases like malaria and typhoid. Europeans were dying so rapidly that most tombs belonged to people who didn't even reach their 40s. When you walk among the towering, moss-covered obelisks of figures like Sir William Jones, you realize that for these colonizers, the grim reality was dying young in a harsh, unforgiving environment, thousands of miles away from home.
Section 4. Coastal Mysteries and Orbs, Shadows by the Sea. As we move out to the coastal regions of Goa and Gujarat, the folklore shifts. It moves away from grand battles and colonial disease into much more intimate, localized mysteries.
Here we have a real historical tragedy that sounds like it was pulled straight out of a thriller movie. At the Three Kings Church in Goa, greed drove a man to orchestrate a literal Last Supper. Here is how it went down. Step 1. King Holger Alvungar poisons two rival kings during a feast on January 6th. Step 2. Supporters of the murdered kings figure it out and gather outside the church ready to tear Holger apart. Step 3. Trapped and totally desperate, Holger swallows poison himself. The bizarre conclusion to all this? All three dead kings were buried right there, inside the church. And today, visitors report this uncanny, incredibly heavy presence lingering right in the pews.
Up the coast in Gujarat, we find Dumas Beach. It's a traditional Hindu cremation ground, known for its striking black sand. Now, people report hearing these disembodied whispers, telling them to turn back at night. But what's really fascinating is the modern ghost hunting tool used here, photography. Photographers often capture quote-unquote orbs at Dumas. Now, factually speaking, an orb is just an unexpected circular artifact caused by a camera flash bouncing off dust or moisture in the air. But in paranormal circles, moving orbs are fiercely defended as physical manifestations of spirits. It's this perfect, curious clash between camera science and the deep-seated belief that a cremation ground just has to hold on to the souls burned there.
Section 5. India's Urban Apparitions, Phantoms of the City. As India modernized, rapid urbanization began generating its own unique, fast-paced modern folklore. Cities just create entirely different kinds of ghosts.
What is absolutely crucial to understand here is how perfectly these apparitions capture modern anxieties. Take the cramped D'Souza Chawl in Mumbai. The ghost is a woman who tragically fell into an unprotected community well. That's a direct reflection of real infrastructure hazards. Or in Meerut's GP block, an abandoned double-story apartment is supposedly haunted by a repetitive vision of four men drinking at a candlelit cable, a super eerie snapshot of suburban isolation. And in Delhi Cantonment, the legend is a lady in white who is killed in a car crash. She hitchhikes, and if you don't stop, she chases your car at unnatural speeds. These aren't grand royal curses, right? They are the tragic accidents and everyday fears of modern city life, totally transformed into localized legends.
Section 6. History haunting the present. Echoes of the past. So what does this all mean? What do all these haunted forts, beaches, and city blocks actually mean for us today?
Ultimately, whether they're real or just myth, these legends serve as a vibrant, living archive of forgotten histories, injustices, and societal traumas. Regardless of your personal belief in the paranormal, these ghost stories act as absolutely crucial mechanisms for cultural memory. They ensure that a murdered 16-year-old prince, a displaced village, or the victims of a colonial turf war aren't just reduced to dry footnotes in a dusty history book.
I want to leave you with this to think about. The next time you hear a local ghost story, are you just going to ask what spirits supposedly linger in the dark? Or will you ask what real, terrifying history is refusing to be forgotten? Thank you so much for exploring this with me today in this explainer, and definitely keep questioning the lore around you.